added to the Constitution after the Civil War, what the voting rights did is protect you from places that was historically discriminatory. And the Voting Rights Act said that those that are historically discriminatory in the South and in the North, there are 2 districts in New York, they cannot change the law without pre-clearance from the Justice Department. Is that right, Attorney Forbes? What did that mean? That means they could not stop early voting without pre-clearing. They could not stop Sunday go to the poll without pre-clearing it. They could not change vote ID without pre-clearing it. When they took that out, that's when they stopped souls to the polls in Florida. That's when they cut down early voting days in Ohio, because they no longer have to pre-clear it. The problem is that 50 years ago, people that didn't have the resources or the ability that we have today got us the Voting Rights Act. 50 years ago, with all our polish, we have not stood up to protect the Voting Rights Act, and they're taking it piece by piece. Yes, Don King is right. On the surface, we see a Trayvon. On the surface, we see Ferguson. But inside is the same economic and political disenfranchisement, the core problem. So they will run us around to put the fires out, but if we never go inside the inferno inside and change the inequality that is structured, we'll be running from one incident to the other. That is why they must make right look wrong and wrong look right. Porter asked me this morning, you think Don King is a great American? I said, in the language of double standards, if you're white and you make business work and you build something that is insurmountable, you are savvy. If you're black and do it, you're a hustler. Donald Trump's name all over the world, he's savvy. Don King, slick. It is amazing how the adjectives we get. Preacher comes down to Sarasota for Clarence Rogers, that is conservative, does what he's told, and speaks well of those in the system. He would be the influential Reverend so-and-so. I ran for president, almost came mayor of New York. I'm very close to the sitting president, but they say the controversial Reverend Al Sharpton. Well, why I'm not the influential Reverend Al Sharpton? But again, quoting King, because I learned this young from him, that you have to be careful, young folks, who your appraiser is. You thought I forgot that lesson. If you go to the wrong appraiser will tell you something of value is worthless. And something that's worthless is of value. We have the Diamond District in New York. The appraiser and the jeweler, if they in cahoots together, you'll be buying some bad stuff. And that's what's wrong. We have the appraisers tell us who's controversial. And the appraisers tell us who's influential. You must ask the question, young people, all the time. Controversial to who? And influential about what? And then what are you using your influence for? Who cares what influence you have if you don't use it for anybody? I remember when we were fighting in the Supreme Court to save affirmative action, Reverend Joseph Lowry, the revered President Emeritus of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, said that the only way we're going to save it is we've got to stop this from going in front of the Supreme Court. We don't have the votes. Said, how are we going to settle it? Said, well, why don't we just give them the money to hold the plaintiff down? Said, well, we're going to need $700,000. every corporate executive that we call couldn't do it. They can go to all the events. They can go to where they buy tables for them to make the company look good, but they could not authorize that. I mean, so many. I'm the vice president of irrelevance. I'm the senior advisor of nothing. We got on the phone and called Don King. And Don King wrote a check for almost $1 million that saved affirmative action. My point to these young people is don't get tricked by wrong appraisals. And don't let people delude you. One, put in your own mind what you want to achieve and choose models and examples that will make you go beyond what is apparent to you. Shoot for higher than was easy. Make your brain have to stretch. Exercise your most difficult limb. And don't be part of the crowd. Stretch out there and lead the crowd. But also know that the struggle continues. Voting rights today. Dealing with the criminal justice system today. Dealing with things from stand your ground all the way to the questions of economic opportunity is still alive today. Yes, we've made a lot of progress. Yes, we've come a long way, but we still have a way to go. And don't stop until we build a nation that has equal protection under the law, as well as equal opportunity. You don't stop when you do better. You stop when you arrive. It is an incomplete journey if we get to the 21st century and we're allowed to be stopped from full equality. And Trayvon and Ferguson and I Can't Breathe, Eric Gardner, and I was out front and all of them, they are only flashpoints of a deeper problem that we must continue to fight. The other admonition I give you is don't judge it on race, judge it on right and wrong. Everybody that is black is not right, and everybody white ain't wrong. All my skin folk ain't my kinfolk. Everybody my color ain't my kind. Don't ever forget there was some whites that went and died to fight for us, while some blacks was cross town saying, I don't know why they marching and why don't Dr. King leave town. Stand up for what's right for everybody. And I mean everybody. Because people got angry when people stood up for women's rights, as Don talked about today. People got angry when some of us say gays should have their rights. Some preachers told me, you don't need to say that. I said, but you can't fight for nobody's rights unless you fight for everybody's rights. Everybody has the right. Even if it's something you may not participate in, you do not have the right to choose for other folk what they should have the right to decide for themselves. So the challenges are still there. The challenge that General Howard and others saw in the 19th century. The challenges that Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and others fought for in the 20th century. The fight that we are still involved in the 21st century. And that is why, with Clarence Rogers and the Howard Club of Southwest Florida, those that have put their minds into making sure that people can come along the path are depending on you to do. I remember one of the highlights of my life, George, was January before last. The President, Barack Obama, had invited us to be his guest on the stage at his second inauguration. Head of the NAACP at that time, Ben Jealous, and the head of the Urban League, Mark Morial, and I were sitting on the fourth row right behind where he would be sworn in. The only ones in front of us was the Supreme Court justices and the former presidents. And as I sat there and waited on that cold morning for him to be sworn in, finally Mrs. Obama got up with 2 Bibles. And the senator about 2 or 3 rows back said, "Al, this is an awesome moment." I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "To think we're watching this president being sworn in on the Bible of Abe Lincoln and the Bible of Dr. Martin Luther King." He said, "I bet you never thought you'd ever see this moment." I told him, I said, "No, but don't be confused. Those 2 Bibles are identical. Same amount of books, same amount of verses, same amount of chapters, same pages. But those 2 identical Bibles took 2 different routes to get here. President Lincoln's Bible was on the mantle in the White House. Heads of states and captains of industries and military leaders used to look at that Bible. But Dr. King's Bible didn't come that route. Dr. King's Bible came through the backwoods of Georgia and the bayous of Louisiana and the poor areas of Mississippi. If you look at the inside cover of Dr. King's Bible, you'll see a cell number. Because when he went to Birmingham, they checked his Bible in his property. And the bailiff put his cell number on it because he couldn't get the Bible till he was finished doing his time for fighting for our civil rights. But little did the bailiff know that when he was writing his cell number in that Bible, that Bible one day would be on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, swearing in the President of the United States. That's why at the end, young people, I leave you with this. Life is about what you do that'll matter long after you're gone. I met Clarence's pastor here. One thing that a preacher doesn't like to admit, and Reverend Richardson pastors one of the largest churches in the country, but I will tell you a little inside trade story. The hardest job of a black preacher is to preach the funeral of an irrelevant Negro. That's a hard job. They roll a body down the aisle, lay it out in front of the altar. Family sit up there slobbering and carrying on. And we supposed to get up and hallucinate a life for you. You never did. I mean, most folks shouldn't have a funeral. Most folks should go straight from the mall to the cemetery. But they ain't nothing to say. Because everything they did was for them. Got them a nice house. Your house will be on the market a week after you gone. Had them a nice car, we'll ride all up and down 95 in your car. The only thing that will matter 2 minutes after you die is what you done for more than yourself. Can some child say you taught them something? Can the neighborhood or community say you made a difference? Do as well as you can, but live beyond yourself so your life will matter more than just yourself. That's why we honor a guy like King. Not to celebrate his wealth, but celebrate what he used his wealth for. That's why we remember Dr. King. I was flying one night with Martin III, his oldest son. And I said, you know what? I know it's going to strike you funny. I said, but your daddy won. He said, won? I said, yeah. He said, what do you mean? I said, I know he was killed before his 40th birthday. I know he left a beautiful wife, widow. He never saw any of his 4 children, including you, grow up, didn't know if he went to college, didn't know if he married, didn't know if he ever had grandchildren. I said, but remember your mother used to show us pictures of him being dragged up the steps? The courthouse in Montgomery charged with income tax evasion. He said, yeah. I said, do you realize the second Monday every January that courthouse is closed? The judge can't come to work. Kurt got to stay home. Balaam got to stay home to celebrate his birthday. Nobody celebrates the governor of Alabama's birthday, but the whole government closes down to celebrate the birthday of a black preacher from Georgia that never held office. If you stand for something, it'll stand longer than you can stand. That's why I tell you to live beyond just the rims of your own ambition. My mother, I conclude by this. My mother that I told you scrubbed floors for me. I think about when I was sitting there negotiating my show on MSNBC. And we went through back and forth, the lawyers going through trying to squeeze the last bit or whatever was the proper thing to do in a negotiation. I asked the guy, the president, I said, what time is my show going to come on every night? He said, 6 o'clock. I said, good, let's go. We got elevated, lawyer, attorney Hardy said to me, why did you say 6 o'clock, good, let's go? I said, you don't understand. He said, what? I said, you got to remember all those years that they drew cartoons of caricatures of me and ridiculed me and told stories on me and told lies on me and then told some stuff that was true. But they said I'd never be nothing, never amount nowhere. I said all them folk get off work by 5 o'clock. They get home by 5:30. They put their little dinner in the microwave or up on the burner. About 5 to 6, they sit down and eat, ready to watch it. They take their little child surf out and hit the button, and I'm sitting right there. The stone that the builder rejected. My mother raised me to believe if you're faithful over a few things, God will make you ruler over many. And it may not be easy, but if you hold on, God will make a way out of no way. And don't let others set your dream. You set your dream just between you and God. And if you're faithful, God will make your dreams come true. Because there are going to be things in your life. I tell my daughters this, you're in a technological age, but let me tell you, there are going to be things that you face in life that you're not going to be able to Google up the answer. There are going to be things that your laptop can't understand. But my mama taught me something. She said there's a part where you run out, and that's where faith comes in. Faith is when you can't figure it out. Faith is when it don't make sense. But faith is when you know that God will make a way anyhow. Faith is when you can't calculate the answer, but you know there is an answer. If you be faithful, that God will make a way. Faith is when the doctors give up, but you hold on for another doctor. Faith is when you have a pile of bills and no money, but you say he will provide all of my needs. Faith is when your friends walk out, when your loved ones won't call your name, when your family turn their back, but you say, I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me now. We come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word. He never, from the outhouse to the White House, he never failed me yet. Thank you, God.